Hey friends, this is Angel Cartagena, and I am just overjoyed on this occasion to be able to share something with you that is special to me. It means a great deal to me, and I'm sharing it because in this season of pandemic fatigue and political discord and so much of the negativity that seems to surround us at this point, I'm concerned that there are people who are being overwhelmed and not sharing the special gifts that they have with the rest of the world. And so, what I'm going to share with you is actually a talk that I developed back when I used to practice law. For 15 years, I was a utility regulation attorney. All that means is I knew all of the laws and stuff that had to do with utility services like electricity, telephone, natural gas, that sort of thing. And when people would hear my story, and especially the fact that I started out in one of this nation's worst urban areas, they would frequently ask whether I would be willing to, give an inspiring word or a motivational speech. And it was in the middle of all that that I developed this talk, which I'm going to share with you this evening. It is called Seven Puerto Rican Sayings. The subtitle is that help me escape the ghetto and live life beyond my wildest dreams. And so I want to share this with you in the hope that it will inspire you, that it will motivate you. And so in order to get this going, I need to do an exercise with you. So I need to borrow your imagination. And the exercise is as follows. I want you to imagine that I invite you to a picnic on the observation deck of the Empire State Building. And because I have diverse friends and I have a wide palate when it comes to food, you're going to be well taken care of. There's going to be everything. Traditional picnic foods like grilled hot dogs, grilled hamburgers, but we'll have some Puerto Rican food, we'll have some Thai food, we'll have some African American, just whatever kind of food you enjoy, mac and cheese, ribs, potato salad, we're going to have it there. Now, I want you to imagine that we all have a wonderful time. You're going to meet some people that I'm telling you they'll be delightful. We'll have conversations, but at some point I kind of say, okay, first can I just get all of your attention? First of all, I want to thank all of you for coming, and then eventually at some point I suggest that we all get on the edge of the observation deck so that we can look at this man-made canyon called Manhattan. If you've ever been in New York and you've been at one of the tallest buildings and one of the high floors there, you look out the window and it's really quite an impressive sight. Like you can't believe, it's a marvel that human beings actually built these things. Now I want you to imagine that at some point after we've all finished taking in the beauty of this view, that I say, hey, you know what? Let's all take a step off the observation deck and see what happens. Who's with me? Now, anytime I've done this talk and have raised my hand and said, who's with me, with only one exception, no hands have gone up. And I'm convinced the one exception is because I think the guy wasn't really paying attention to what I asked. And why don't people raise their hands? Why don't people volunteer? Well, that's because you and I are painfully aware of something called the law of gravity. See, what you and I know is that if we step off of that building, and I don't know the physics of it, so I don't know whether it happened in 30 seconds, I don't know whether it happened in a minute, minute and a half, but either way, eventually, you and I will become sidewalk pancake. And so why is it called, though, the law of gravity? It's because it's universal. You see, it doesn't matter whether you're Hispanic, African American, it doesn't matter whether you are Asian or white, it doesn't matter whether you are independent, Republican, Democrat, it doesn't matter whether you're rich or poor, I don't care who you are. If you step off the edge of that observation deck, sidewalk pancake. And so why do I do this exercise? Because I am pointing out the fact that there are universal laws and principles that regulate our physical existence. In other words, if not for gravity, we would be floating off into space somewhere. Well, I share that with you because I am equally convinced that just as we have universal principles and laws regarding our physical life, that we have universal principles and laws for how we conduct our life that will oftentimes have consequences regarding whether we succeed or whether we fail. And so it is those principles that I want to share with you through 7 Puerto Rican sayings. Now, in order for me to show you, how I came up with this, it will make more sense to you if I shared a little of my story. I was born and raised in the city of Newark, New Jersey. My first recollections of life were living in the Columbus Home Projects, which back in the day were known as Nam, as in Vietnam, as in the war in Vietnam. In fact, I can remember going to sleep at the age of 5 to the sound of gunfire. Newark, New Jersey was one of 3 cities, Watts and Detroit being the other 2, that suffered extensive rioting and all sorts of trauma related to the civil rights movement. And in fact, those 3 cities have not really recovered fully from that which happened so many years ago. But it also led to Newark becoming one of the sort of precursors to the urban challenges of the 80s, the shootings and the drugs and all this kind of stuff. And that's the environment that I grew up in. But I am fortunate to say that even in the midst of that, I had parents who, on the one hand, my mother was a learner. She valued education. She modeled that for us. A father who modeled the work ethic and who basically said, this is the road that you'll walk, and from it you shall not depart. But I ended up earning a scholarship to a private boarding school in New England. And after 3 years there, I went on to an Ivy League school and then to law school. And eventually, the pinnacle of my law career, if you will, is that Mayor Anthony Williams, the mayor of Washington, D.C., nominated to me the chairman of the D.C. Public Service Commission, which regulates utility service in the nation's capital. And that was the first time that a Latino, a Hispanic, was nominated to head an independent agency in Washington, D.C.'s life. And so I'm sharing these universal principles of success under the conviction that I have applied them and that they work. But the thing is, how did I learn them? And that is where we come up with the title of my saying. You see, my parents used to have these regular sayings they used to say all the time back in the house. And to be honest with you, I don't know why they said them. I don't know where they got them from. But what I found out eventually, as I went back and meditated on each of these sayings, what I realized is that they were teaching us laws of success, but they were doing so through these Puerto Rican sayings and proverbs. Now, before I start sharing the 7, I'm almost there. I do have 2 disclaimers that I want to put forth. The first one is that some of you watching this may have grown up in a Latino Hispanic family, but not Puerto Rican. You may have grown up as a Cuban, Mexican, Peruvian, Argentinian, Chilean. But here's the thing, you heard these sayings in your house. And the truth is, I think if you looked at the etymology of these sayings, many of them probably go back to our common ancestry of Spain. But I still call them 7 Puerto Rican sayings because I heard them from my parents and they're Puerto Rican. So I just want to make sure that you are aware. So if one of your friends calls you up and say, hey, this guy tried to pass this off, but I heard this in my household. Yes, I'm acknowledging. If you're of Hispanic descent, you probably heard this in your house as well. The other thing I want to say is that I am no longer an attorney. I've been for some years a pastor, now a life coach. I'm an author and speaker. And so I want to focus a little bit on the pastor thing because as I share these with you, I'm going to actually share some Bible passages that reflect these principles. And my thing is this, if you're not a Christian, I'm not trying to push my beliefs on you. You don't have to believe what I believe. I totally respect your right to believe whatever you do. I just want to share these because I'm really trying to prove that they're universal principles. In fact, if you listen to this and you grew up, let's say Jewish or Muslim, you probably have heard principles similar to these in your scriptures, in the Quran and the Torah. And so my thing is, don't be put off by my citing Bible verses. You're not required to believe what I do. I'm just trying once again to make the point that these ideas, these universal principles are exactly that. They are universal. They are part of and woven into our human fabric. And so with all that being said, let me go ahead and start by sharing the first saying. The first one is, si naciste pa martillo, del cielo te caen los clavos. What this means is, or literally, it is, if you were born a hammer from heaven, the nails will fall. And so, in two ways, there are two kind of lessons that are being taught here. One is that when you have a purpose, when you're designed for a particular purpose, everything that you need to accomplish that purpose will come to you. But for me, the most important part of it is the idea of being born a hammer, the idea that you and I have a purpose. And so I call this the law of direction. The law of direction says this: life must be lived with a vision that creates a purpose in our life. Napoleon Hill, in his classic work, Think and Grow Rich, refers to this as definiteness of purpose. Stephen Covey, on the other hand, in his classic book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he calls this beginning with the end in mind. In the Bible, Ephesians chapter 2, verse 10 says this: for we are God's workmanship, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do. And so the whole idea is that all of us have a purpose and should be living for that purpose. Unfortunately, the truth is that that is not how many people live. Part of this, I think, is because early in life, no one teaches us that we have a purpose. What they do is they tell us what we're going to do next in life. Like, you get up to 5 and they're like, okay, you got to go to school. And when you're in elementary school, it's like, okay, you graduated, you got to go to middle school. In middle school, you got to go to high school. For some of us, you got to go to college. But here's the point. At some point, there comes a moment when you are no longer having these choices made for you. You graduate from school, and I'm sad to say, many people, once they graduate from school, they have no sense. They have no idea of what they want to do with their lives. And oftentimes, these are the folks, you know them because they live their life working a job so that they can make a paycheck. And one of the ways you know them is, here are 2 phrases that regularly come out of their mouths. One is they always refer to Wednesday as hump day, or you often at the end of the work week hear them saying, thank God it's Friday. The problem with that is, if you say hump day and thank God it's Friday, it shows a person who you live for your weekends. What that means is you only live for 1/3 of your life. Well, what happened to the other 2/3? And so the whole idea is, when you live for your purpose, then now you get to use the whole week the way you want to use it. Benjamin Disraeli, who is one of Great Britain's, considered one of Great Britain's great prime ministers, he said the following: the secret of success is constancy to purpose. Notice that he says not only you have to have a purpose, but you have to be constant in it. You have to remain focused on it. And Washington Irving, the author and a diplomat, wrote the following. He says, great minds have purposes, others have wishes. And so if you don't have a purpose, or if you don't have a vision, then, well, how do we fix this? Here's what you need to do. Someone taught me to do this, and it worked really well, is write a mission statement. Write a mission statement. And the thing is this: you need to apply the Peter Drucker rule. Peter Drucker is considered one of this country's foremost experts on business, has written extensively on management and how to succeed in business. And his rule was that every individual and every organization should have a written mission statement, but that statement should be short enough to fit on a t-shirt. In other words, we're not asking you to write a manifesto. Just have a brief phrase, a sentence, that explains what the purpose of your life is to yourself and to others. Now, having a written mission statement is important because it helps you accomplish 3 things. The first thing is it makes decision making easier. When you become an adult and you don't have parents telling you what to do, all of a sudden you got all these people you can hang out with, you got all these activities you can do. And the problem with so many of us is we hang out with so many people, we do so many things, and many of those things take away resources, they drain our time and our energy. and they don't add to our purpose. And so if you have for example, if you are looking to become the first physician in your family, then sitting on a couch playing video games is not an option, because you need to study to become a physician. You really need to hit the books and learn all that you can about biology, chemistry, all the stuff. Listen, it's a tough road. 4 years of college, 4 years of medical school, internship, and a residency before you are a fully board certified physician. And so playing video games all day, not consistent with that. Second thing is, when you have a written mission statement, it helps overcoming challenges easier. You see, if you've lived long enough, then you can agree with me. You can share this with other people. Life is hard, and stuff is going to happen that makes life hard, like unexpected illnesses or losses of family members or financial distress. I mean, there's all sorts of things that will challenge you. And if you don't have a mission statement that clearly keeps your purpose in front of you, those things can take you under. The well-known German philosopher Nietzsche said as follows. He said, "He who has a why to live for can bear almost anyhow." He who has a why to live for can bear almost anyhow. And so the last thing is that having a mission statement is really tied to the other 2 points, which is it helps you stay focused. It helps you stay focused. Harvard philosopher George Santayana said the following. He said, "In accomplishing anything definite, a man renounces everything else." And that goes again to the decision-making process. What are you going to let into your life that is either going to help you accomplish that purpose, or if it's not, then you need to exclude it. All right? So the first is the law of direction. The second saying I have is, "Si quieres enfermar, cena mucho y vete a acostar." The literal saying there is, if you want to get sick, eat a lot and sleep a lot. And it goes to the second law, which is the law of committed effort. The law of committed effort says as follows. It is the willingness to do more than what you are paid to do, and to do it with a positive attitude. Listen again. It is the willingness to do more than what you are paid to do with a positive attitude. See, one of the most counterproductive mindsets that I've ever come across is people who say, well, if they're not going to pay me more, I'm not going to do any more. I'm only going to do what I'm paid to do. But see, here's the downside to that. If you have entered into a contract with an employer and they said that for these duties, you get paid this amount of money, if all you do are these duties, then don't expect more than this particular money. Do you understand? You made an agreement with someone. You're in a contract where you said, okay, I will take X amount of dollars for Y amount of work. And so if you don't do more than Y, how come you're expecting more money? Proverbs Chapter 6 has these proverbs starting at 6. It says, "Go to the ant, you sluggard. Consider its ways and be wise. It has no commander, no overseer or ruler, yet it stores provisions in summer and gathers food at harvest. How long will you lie there, you sluggard? When will you get up from your sleep? A little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come on you like a bandit, and scarcity like an armed man." The truth is that if you want to succeed in life, you have to be willing to do more and do it with a positive attitude. Now, I believe that there are 3 benefits to living by this law. The first thing is it develops the habit of personal initiative. In other words, one of the ways that you can tell someone is not on their way to success is that they basically wait around and sit to see for you to give them instructions to do something. And if you won't do anything unless someone tells you, then there's no opportunity for you to learn. There's no opportunity for you to grow. But if you are willing to go, the extra mile for an employer, then oftentimes what happens is it requires you, it focuses you so that when you want to get certain things done, you constantly look around you for who can I recruit to help me with this? What financial resources do I need? What information do I need? You're constantly moving toward that goal. Another thing that's great about the law of committed effort is it gets you noticed under the law of contrast. Listen, because most people don't practice the habit. The truth is that There was a book one time called The Path Least Taken or The Road Least Taken, that most people will take the easy way out. Most people will just not try all that hard. And somebody said it to me this way one time, a long time ago, that it made a lot of sense. And he said this. He said, "There's no traffic jam on the extra mile." There's no traffic jam on the extra mile that you will not run. And so, listen, it will get you noticed in an organization. And that's the third benefit, which, listen, it makes you indispensable to any organization. I can tell you this: if you go above and beyond constantly at your job and willing to do more than what you're paid for, when the time comes, and the time frequently comes for every organization, every business, at some point you've got to cut employees out. Trust me, your employer will not let you go because they value you too much. And by the way, here's another principle that I have found to be true, that's related to the law of committed effort, and this is the principle that if you live by the law of committed effort and you do more work than what you're paid to do, that eventually, listen, eventually the reward will come. I have known many people who have lived by the law of committed effort, and it has never failed that somehow, it usually is in a promotion, it's usually in a job, it's usually that they learned everything they needed and now own their own businesses, and they make way more money as the owners of their business. I don't care where the money comes from, the rewards come from, but I have never met anyone who has lived by the law of committed effort that has not at some point reaped the benefit of that extra effort. And so here's what you need to ask yourself by way of application. And by the way, if I give you application questions, jot these down and journal on them. Really get into them, discuss them with people. Here's what I would ask you to say. You need to choose, which mindset do you have? Do you have the I want to live off society mindset? Or do you have a how can I serve society mindset? See, because your mindset will dictate whether you can or cannot live peaceably with the law of committed effort. And so you have the law of direction, you have the law of committed effort. Puerto Rican saying number 3, no hay caballo, por mejor bueno sea que no tropiece. What that literally means is there is no horse, no matter how good that horse is, that doesn't eventually trip. This is tied to what I call the law of failing forward. Now, in full disclosure, I borrowed the term failing forward from well-known motivational speaker, writer, John Maxwell, because there's just no more perfect way to say it. Maxwell wrote an entire book called Failing Forward, and the point in this book, and I've learned it to be true in life as well, is that no one, listen to me, no one succeeds in life without experiencing failure. Here's the definition of the law of failing forward. It is the understanding that all people experience failure in their lives, and that the goal, listen, the goal is to learn from our failures. James chapter 1 says this, starting at verse 2, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith develops perseverance. Perseverance must finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. Trials are challenges in life. Trials are the things of failure. And oftentimes, and this becomes really important, this one was really important to me because in my household, one of the few things I think my parents didn't do well, and I think this is reflected in many households of color. I got to be honest with you, I don't know enough people to know if this was true when they were growing up. But I do know that in particular cultures, the very idea of failure is horrendous. Yet, if you look at the history of the world, and particularly the history of America, we have countless stories of people who failed constantly but eventually succeeded. Look at Macy's department store. R.H. Macy supposedly went bankrupt in business like 7 times before he finally succeeded with his famous department store. Edison supposedly went through thousands of experiments before he found the right filament that would make a light bulb last. There are countless stories in And one of the reasons, by the way, I love to read biographies of successful people is in those books, they will tell you how they failed. They look great now, but they went through all sorts of difficulties. And so here's why I talk about this, and this very important is, first of all, you need to understand that failure is only wrong if you use it as an excuse to quit. Failure by itself is not bad. It's only bad when you use it as an excuse to quit. One of my favorite heroes is Muhammad Ali, the great heavyweight boxing champion. And he said this: whether inside the ring or out, ain't nothing wrong with being knocked down. It's staying down that's wrong. You get that? Ain't nothing wrong with being knocked down. It's staying down that's wrong. And, the thing is, and I want to make this point again, there can be no success without failure. There's a Chinese proverb that says as follows: a gem cannot be polished without friction, nor man perfected without trials. Someone put it to me this way, and it stayed with me, and I want to share it with you. He said this: the train to success goes through the town of failure. And the trick for us is to not get off at the town of failure. In other words, you cannot succeed without failing, but the thing is to not stop. Listen, to not stop trying because you failed. When he said this to me, he painted it in a way that was hilarious. He was like, some people are sitting on the train, they're sleeping, drool coming down, the train stops, and all of a sudden they think, oh my gosh, this is my stop. And they get off the train, except that they didn't get off at their stop success, they got off at failure. And so the whole point is, stay on the train and wait until it reaches success. So what's the application here? So listen, whenever you have failure or a struggle, I need you to ask yourself this question: what lessons can I learn from this situation? Because going back to the passage I quoted from the book of James in the Bible, it's the idea that, listen, struggles and failure, our trials, are meant to perfect us. And so every failure, this is the thing this is the mindset I need you to adopt. Every failure in life, every challenge in life, every difficult situation you've been in there are lessons to be learned. So learn the lessons. The next Puerto Rican saying, this was a huge one in our house: dime con quién andas y te diré quién tú eres. Dime con quién andas y te diré quién tú eres. What that literally means is, tell me who you're walking with and I'll tell you who you are. We call that the law of the inner circle. The law of the inner circle is defined as follows: you must be careful to only share your intimate time with those people whose lifestyle, values, and thought life are consistent with your own. Now, I want you to be clear on what I'm not saying, because sometimes people take this the wrong way. I'm not saying that you should ever, first of all, think that you're better than other people. Whatever happens, I live secure with the knowledge that but for the grace of God go I. That I could have been like many of my friends who succumbed to drugs, to violence back home, who even today live in poverty because they made bad choices as they went along. And we easily could be one of those people. So my thing is, don't ever think yourself that you're better than someone. And then here's the other thing. I'm not saying don't have interactions with people who think differently than you. You should actually have interactions with people who think differently than you, who have different cultures. And here's why. One, you can sometimes learn things from them that are actually quite useful. Like, I'm not so arrogant to think that our culture, our nation has the answers to everything. Let me tell you a quick story about that. I was on a missions trip in South Africa, and man, I am into schedules. I am into time. I'm like, if I tell you show up at 10 a.m. and you show up at 10 a.m., in my world, you're late because you should have been there at 9:55. You understand what I'm saying? And so I was tripping this one day because we're supposed to take all of these medicines and foods to a township with people who are suffering, and things were being delayed. And so I had a sister there who saw that I was uncomfortable, and so she says, brother, can I make you a cup of coffee? And so she invited me over, and if you haven't been to South Africa, a lot of South Africans, they drink tea. So she made tea for herself, but she knew the Puerto Rican brother, he's got to have coffee. She made me some coffee, and so as we sat down, she says, "May I share something with you?" And I said, "Sure, sure." And so she says, "We Africans have a saying." She said, "You Americans and Europeans have watches. We Africans have time." That was amazingly important for me to learn in that time, because I still believe in the importance of schedules and keeping time and maximizing productivity. But what she taught me there was to not value that so much that you forget the people that you're looking to serve. That there are times when people's needs are so important that trying to adhere to a schedule is not that important. So sometimes you can learn something like that. The other reason why you want to deal with people who are different than you are is sometimes it helps you to solidify your own philosophies, ideas, and beliefs. That there are times when someone makes, in challenging you to explain what you believe, you really get sort of firm in that belief. And so it becomes important for you to understand that you need to surround yourself with people who are going to be supportive. You can't share your dreams with everyone. There are some people who will be naysayers. In fact, a lot of these friends who I told you about, who are still back in Newark, New Jersey, and they live in poverty and stuff. When I got the scholarship to go away to Westminster, they were like, "Why you got to go to that school? What's wrong with our public school?" And why you must think you better than we are, and tried to guilt me into staying. In fact, I actually know a couple of guys who they had the talent and were recruited to be part of the program, but they said no because they could not see a life outside of Newark, New Jersey. And you're going to have those kind of people in your lives. Here's one other thing I want to share with you, which is there's a businessman I knew who was very prosperous. And I specifically use the word prosperous with him. I'm going to tell you why. I know a lot of people who have a whole lot of money and they are miserable as all get out. They are just miserable. Like they're rich, but they are miserable. They have no joy in life. But this wasn't the case with this man. Not only was he was worth apparently like hundreds of millions of dollars, but he had a great marriage. He had people who loved him. He had great friends. He had his health. And so that's why I call him prosperous. And whenever I was around him, I made sure to shut my mouth, drink my coffee, and listen to whatever he had to say. And here's something he said that stayed with me. He said, "If you tell me two things about yourself, I will tell you where you'll be in 20 years. And he said, the two things are, tell me what you're reading. In other words, what are you putting in your mind? And the other thing is, tell me who you're hanging out with." And so it became important to understand, again, that as people come into your lives, you don't want to mistreat them. You don't ever want to think you're better than them. But you do need to ask the question, is this a person who's going to help me in my accomplishing my purpose, or will they hold me back? And if they're going to hold you back, just have some boundaries with them. I have family members that I love very, very much, but they will seldom see me. I will make sure to show up at all the important events like weddings and all the other stuff, but we ain't going to spend a whole lot of time together because they're just not wanting to improve themselves. They are not trying to accomplish. And when you have, when you're trying to accomplish a purpose, there are oftentimes so many pieces to it and so many activities. You just need to stay focused. Let me share these quotes and then an application on this. George Washington, the first president of the United States, said this. He said, "Be courteous to all, but intimate with few, and let those few be well tried before you give them your confidence." Remember this. If you don't remember anything else, you cannot share your dreams with everyone. You should only look to share dreams with people who will support you. And by the way, here's another thing I want to make sure you understand, that when I say that you need to surround yourself with people with similar values and who will support you and who you can share your dreams with, this does not mean you need to surround yourself with rubber stampers. If that's the case, they're not your friends. You need friends who will support you, but part of that support is they'll challenge you when they see you going down a wrong road. I want if you say you love me, tell me when you think I'm messing up. I want to hear that from you. And I may not agree with you after we discuss it out, but I at least want you to bring it to my attention. Does that make sense? And so Confucius, the well-known Chinese philosopher, said as follows. He says, have no friends not equal to yourself. And again, when he said this, he's not talking about equal in terms of you're better than them, that you're on some kind of hierarchy. But the thing is, when I was growing up, man, either I was going to be like my friends, hanging out at parties, smoking and hanging out and all that kind of stuff, or I was hitting the books and doing the things necessary that would eventually allow me to earn that scholarship. And so the application I have for you is, listen, you need to have a tough conversation with yourself. And this is what you need to ask yourself. Are the people in your life adding to your success or detracting from it? And the other thing is, if you don't have those people in your life, now you know what changes you need to make in order to succeed, which leads us to the next saying. Puerto Rican saying number 5 is, coge consejo, llega a viejo. Now, it's a cute saying because it rhymes, but what it literally means is if you want to become old, take advice. And this I call the law of mentoring. The law of mentoring says this: seek to have an older person in your life who can provide you with guidance, and seek to provide guidance to someone younger than yourself. In other words, have a mentor and then be a mentor. Proverbs 15:22 says this: plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors they succeed. Why do you need to have another mentor? Because it helps you to learn from another's wisdom. Someone put it to me this way a long time ago, and it stayed with me. It says, to be smart is to learn from your mistakes. To be wise is to learn from others' mistakes. And so the idea is that there are people who have accomplished the things that you want to accomplish. And so you want to connect yourself with those people, have them be mentors in your life. When I went away to this school, I grew up, again, the people who I was surrounded by, they were postal workers, they worked in factories, they were truck drivers. And so here I am, believe it or not, it was watching the Perry Mason show that I aspired to become an attorney. That was actually what inspired me. Like the idea of being in a courtroom and wearing a suit and, making arguments in front of a judge and winning a case, all of that really excited me. And so when I got to the school, I found out that one of my teachers at the school was married to an attorney. And so I just kind of went up and said, Mrs. H, can I, do you think your husband might take a few minutes to talk to me? Dude, forget take a few minutes, man. He took, on a Saturday when I was free from my sports obligations, he took me down to his law office. He couldn't show me the actual what was in the files, but he showed me where they keep the files. And he walked me through like what happens at a trial, and that a lot of what the lawyers do is actually behind the scenes. All of that was like really helpful. What I find in life is that most people, if they are approached, will be more than happy to help you. The thing is, if they are successful, they are very busy people. And if they say, yes, please, whatever you do, make the most of that time. Do what they tell you to do. Respect their time. Keep the appointments with them. Keep your appointments with them because, listen, they are busy and their time is valuable. But even with all that, I find that successful people often like to be mentors. And then being a mentor, listen, this is important for 2 reasons. Number 1, it creates accountability. You can't live a life that is inconsistent with what you say you believe. If you're mentoring someone, it now means a whole lot more for you to be consistent in how you conduct yourself. But then the other thing is that you leave an inheritance. That part of being successful is not just gaining money and material wealth or making a name for yourself, but it's about legacy. And for those of you who are younger and watching this, that might be a difficult concept for you. But trust me when I tell you that when you get to my age and older, you really start to think about what am I leaving behind that could really be a blessing to society and other people. And in that spirit, Catherine Eyre, the author and poet, said the following. She said, if you can't be a good example, then you'll just have to be a horrible warning. And so my thing is, in that spirit, let's try and be good mentors. And so the law of mentoring is have a mentor, but also be a mentor. And so ask yourself the following question. What am I planting? What am I leaving behind? What am I doing that is going to outlast me? Let me ask you this, as a pastor who's done many funerals, what will people say when they gather to celebrate your life? It's a question you need to ask yourself, because it is all part of having a vision and working toward that vision and of succeeding in life. The next to last saying, the sixth saying, is si te pica es porque ajo come. The exact translation doesn't work so well, so I'm going to give you a approximation, a paraphrase, if you will. And it says this: if your mouth is burning, it's because you've been eating hot peppers. The success law here is the law of the harvest. Now, it's funny because I have known the law of the harvest by one of two sayings. One of the things I heard frequently when I was a kid was people who would say, what you sow is what you reap. I actually used to say the saying this way: people have what they have because they do what they do. In other words, if you want to eat corn, you can't plant green bean seeds. If you want to be a doctor, as I said earlier, you can't spend your day playing video games. Galatians Chapter 6, in fact, it was funny because I figured this principle out before I even became a Christian, let alone a pastor. And so imagine my surprise when I opened up the Bible one day after I became a Christian, and I saw this in Galatians Chapter 6, starting at verse 7. Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. And so the whole idea is that you cannot get back from life something that is inconsistent with what you sow. And here's the thing. This is true with regards to your thoughts and also your behaviors, your actions. James Lane Allen, with regards to our thoughts, James Lane Allen said the following. He said, you cannot escape the results of your thoughts. Whatever your present environment may be, you will fall, remain, or rise with your thoughts, your vision, your ideal. You will become as small as your controlling desire or as great as your dominant aspiration. And Henry Ford said it as follows: think you can, think you can't. Either way, you'll be right. In other words, that if you convince yourself that you can't accomplish something, then you won't accomplish it, because you won't even try, because you've convinced yourself that you can't. But if you convince yourself that you can, there's a good chance you will accomplish it, because if you think you can and you live by the belief that you can, you'll talk to whoever you need to talk to. You'll get the information you need. You'll get the money you'll get whatever you need. Surround yourself with the people you need to accomplish that thing which you want to accomplish. And then with regards to actions, Oscar Hammerstein said the following. He said, there's a very real relationship, both quantitatively and qualitatively, between what you contribute and what you get out of this world. And of course, the other quote that is special to me, it's always been one of my favorites, is attributed to Albert Einstein. He said, insanity is continuing to do the same thing you've always done and expect different results. And so the truth is that oftentimes what we are surrounded with in our lives is a result of our thought life and our actions. We have planted those seeds. And so it becomes important for you to understand you cannot get out of life what you're not willing to invest into it. And so if that means going back to school, go back to school. If it means, making some economic decisions so that you can spend more time at home, do that. Whatever it is. Listen, whatever it is, know this: our time on this earth is limited. And so you need to be careful about how you spend your time, how you spend your resources, who you hang out with, and what you allow to come into your mind. The application is for you to ask yourself this: am I happy with where I am? And if you can answer honestly to that question, no, then the next thing you must ask yourself is this: what must I change? What must I change? The last of the Puerto Rican sayings is vale más el que sabe más. This is the law of the eternal student. The saying literally means the one who's worth more knows more. And again, this doesn't go back to the whole idea of you having a hierarchy thinking where someone is better than someone else. It's the idea that the people who educate themselves, who learn, who constantly take in information, they are worth more in terms of they can produce more, right? You've put more. Think of it as a car, right? If you have a car, you only put half a tank of gas and you got a long trip, you're gonna run out of gas. The car will stop somewhere in the middle of the trip. You've got to put enough gas to get you to the end. And so the whole idea is to learn. And in fact, I sort of gave the law this particular definition. When we lose our desire to learn, we stop growing. There's no standing still in life. In life, you are either growing or you're going back. And if you are not learning, then you're going back. The people who I know have succeeded in every area of life. They are fierce readers. And in this day and age, I know that many of you have replaced books with podcasts. That's cool too. The methodology doesn't matter, but it is the idea of people educating themselves, constantly gaining knowledge, not for knowledge's sake though. Learn stuff that you can put to use, that you can apply in your life in order to succeed. Proverbs Chapter 4 verse 7 says this: wisdom is supreme, therefore get wisdom. Though it cost you all you have, get understanding. And so the whole idea is that, just holding wisdom is really, the way I've always distinguished it is there's knowledge, that information that you possess, but there's wisdom, how you apply the knowledge. Wisdom is really applied knowledge. Frederick Douglass said the following: a little learning indeed may be a dangerous thing, but the want of learning is a calamity to any people. And there's an unknown author who wrote the following, and it's an exchange between God and a person. And God says this: your task is to build a better world. The person who he's talking to says, how? This world is such a large, vast place, and there's nothing I can do. But God in all his wisdom said, just build a better you. Build a better you. In this spirit, I remember having a conversation with my youngest sister. She was going through some things for a while, and she came over one day. We were going to have dinner, and we were sitting on the back porch, and she asked me an interesting question. She said, can I ask you something? I said, sure. And when did you know that you weren't an adult? I really couldn't respond in the moment, and my dog was looking at me like, dude, it's time for my walk. So I said, you know what, let me walk the dog, and I'll come back. And so I meditated on that as I walked, and when I came back, I said, I think I have an answer for you. I believe that I became an adult the moment I realized that I don't know everything, and I will never know everything. That level of humility is needed because it is what makes you or will lead you to become the eternal student. You need to constantly learn. And so here's my application. Seek books and information that will expand your current or desired skills. And again, as I said earlier, it doesn't have to be a book. In this day and age, it can be podcasts. It could be YouTube videos. I've actually learned quite a few things off of YouTube. So identify downtime that can be used productively. The one common example I give is if your habit is to listen to music on your way to work, replace that with a podcast that will teach you something that you need to get toward your vision and your purpose. And then finally, get a life coach or a mentor that can help you to manage your life. One of the things that I do as a life coach oftentimes is help people to learn things either about themselves or to learn these principles I'm sharing with you tonight so that they can maximize their purpose, so that they can become the people who they are meant to be. I love watching people grow through a relationship of mentoring and teaching and all that sort of thing. So as we get ready to close out, let me just quickly say this, that I've given this talk many, many different times, and as I gave it, I continued to notice or feel that there was something missing. And as I thought about it more, as I did more research, as I did more studying, what I realized is that these 7 principles were very important in my succeeding, but that the reason that these principles succeed, and really any success principles succeed, is because they stand on 3 pillars. There are 3 sort of foundational ideas that you need to believe in order for these principles to succeed, to help you succeed in life. And the 3 pillars are as follows. First of all, there is the pillar of choice. Success presumes that you understand the idea and believe the idea that you have free will. An unknown author said this: every moment you have a choice, regardless of what happened before. Choose right now to move forward positively and confidently into your incredible future. And there was actually one saying I remember hearing a long time ago, attributed to Eleanor Roosevelt, the former First Lady of the United States. And she said something like this: wherever you find yourself in life, it is at the end of a chain whose links are made of the choices that you made. In other words, wherever you are now in life, whether you're happy with it or you're not happy with it, you are where you are as a result of choices that you have made all throughout your life. And listen, the truth is there's some choices that we'll never be able to escape, but um, but the one thing that's great is that you can start today to start making different choices than the ones that you've made up until now. The second pillar is, I'll call it transcendence, and it's this: we're all designed with a purpose that is beyond us. In other words, there's a purpose, there's something bigger than we are. John Henry Newman, who's a theologian, said the following. He said, everyone who breathes, high and low, educated and ignorant, young and old, man and woman, has a mission, has a work. We're not sent into this life for nothing. We're not born at random. We're not here that we may go to bed at night, get up in the morning, toil for our bread, eat, drink, laugh, joke, sin when we have a mind, and reform when we're tired of sinning, rear a family, and die. That's a mouthful, isn't it? But he says this: God sees every one of us. He creates every soul for a purpose. And so the thing I want you, again, even if you don't believe what I believe, I do believe this. Even before I became a Christian, I did believe that there is a purpose that is bigger than we are. What that purpose is, all of us have to find. But there is something that is bigger than we are. That people who live for themselves do not succeed the way people who live for others do. That, listen, whatever gift you've been given, it's been given to you to give away to the world, not to hide it. And then the last thing is, and it's tied to that, is the last pillar is called selflessness, that our purpose and our talents are designed to serve others. John McNaughton put it this way: maturity begins to grow when you can sense your concern for others outweighing your concern for yourself. You've been given gifts and talents. You are special in what you have to give this world. Listen, it was given to you to give away. And so in that spirit, let me close out with my favorite story and then let you go. And my favorite story has to do with a man who has a dream, and in this dream, he has the ability to talk to God. Like, he can ask God anything he wants to. And so he approaches God, and the question that is on his mind is, what is the difference between heaven and hell? And so God says, come, my son. And he takes them to this hill where there is this long table. And I want you to imagine that every food you could possibly imagine is on that table. I'm talking about, you may not eat everything that's on there, but there's enough of it and there's enough variety that everybody can find something that they want to eat. And it just looks amazing. But what the man notices is that the people sitting around this table are sickly looking. They look like they're starving, like they're hungry. And so the man says to God, well, Lord, how can that be? And God says, take a closer look. And what the man notices is that the people have these long handled spoons, and they haven't quite figured out how to feed themselves. And so God in this moment says, son, that is hell. Let me now show you heaven. And when he takes the man to heaven, the man is totally blown away, because you have the same long table. You have all the same fantastic foods, and the people sitting around it have those same long-handled spoons, but they look happy and well-fed and full of joy and contentment. And the man is totally blown away and looks at God and says, Lord, how can that be? And God says, son, take a closer look. And what the man sees is that in heaven, the people figured out to dip the spoons in the food and feed the person on the other side of the table. I believe with all of my heart that one of the reasons that I have been allowed to succeed in life, that despite my humble beginnings, that I have accomplished all that I have, is because at some point I figured out that life is not about me, that it's about feeding the person on the other side of the table. And so I hope these 7 Puerto Rican sayings help you. I hope that the principles attached to those help you. I pray that this has been a time well spent and that you are now inspired to go forth and find that purpose if you don't have it. If you do have it, work toward that purpose. Do whatever it is that you have to do. I want to hear your story, and I want to know that you have lived in such a way that when all is said and done, you've left it all on the field and you stand with a sense of contentment and joy because life was worth living. Take care, and I'm glad that I had the opportunity to share this with you. Bye.